Good afternoon and welcome to the October 26th regular meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission. I will first call roll. Vice Chair Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Han.
Here.
Commissioner Herr.
Here.
Commissioner Keene.
Here.
All right, all 5 commissioners are here and accounted for. Turning to item number 2, public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda. Are there any public comments at this time?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Dr. Derek Kerr, a whistleblower. Does it not strike you as odd that in the 20-year history of the Ethics Commission, not a single whistleblower retaliation claim has been substantiated? Not one. After this year's civil grand jury report, one would think that this issue would be examined. Instead, the acting director's report presents a staff work plan that lists 10 topics for your consideration. Not one of them addresses your retaliation investigations and their failure to sustain any claims. 4 months after the civil grand jury report pointed out the problems that can be addressed, there are no visible plans to address it. Your draft annual report does not specify how many retaliation complaints were substantiated. You have to read between the lines, and doing so, you find, once again, that none were sustained. The annual report should specify how many retaliation complaints were substantiated. There should be a little category for that. The prominent display of zeros year after year might lead someone on the Ethics Commission to realize that something isn't right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, turning to item 3, discussion and possible action regarding complaints received or initiated by the Ethics Commission concerning San Francisco Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code Section 3.218, incompatible activities, and possible closed session. I'll ask for any public comments pertaining to agenda item 3.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Lynette Sweet, and I think that I need to shouldn't address you. Can I address you on this item?
I don't believe this item relates to you, Ms. Sweet. I think it relates to your matter relates to a further item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mine said item 3.
Should be, I think, item 9.
Forgive me. I think I'm looking at something wrong.
Yeah, but we will get to your Ms. Sweet. Any other public comment?
David Pilpel, good evening. Speaking as an individual, just wanted to inquire why this matter was separately calendared from item 9, where there are other matters in closed session.
Because it was requested that it be put number 1 on the calendar for some reasons, personal reasons.
Excellent. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Otherwise, it would have been.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you. Do I hear any motion or any discussion on whether we should hear this item number 3 in closed session?
I move that we hear this matter in closed session.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's carried unanimously. We will go into closed session on item number 3.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
Working for the City and County of San Francisco will immerse you in a vibrant and dynamic city that's on the forefront of economic growth, the arts, and social change. Our city has always been on the edge of progress and innovation. After all, we're at the meeting of land and sea.
Our city is famous for its iconic scenery, historic designs, and world-class style. It's the birthplace of blue jeans, and where the Rock holds court over the largest natural harbor on the West Coast.
Our 28,000 city and county employees play an important role in making San Francisco what it is today.
We provide residents and visitors with a wide array of services, such as improving city streets and parks, keeping communities safe, and driving buses and cable cars.
Our employees enjoy competitive salaries, as well as generous benefits programs. But most importantly, working for the City and County of San Francisco gives employees an opportunity to contribute their ideas, energy, and commitment to shape the city's future.
Thank you for considering a career with the City and County of San Francisco.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Robinson from the Department of Public Health, and I'm the Director of Behavioral Health Services. We're very pleased that you're here with us today to help us launch this much-awaited program. And I'm very honored that Mayor Lee could be here with us today. He has been incredibly instrumental in helping San Francisco become the 5th county in California to implement this program. Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to one of our important sites in San Francisco where a lot of important work is being done, and this happens to be a large division of our Department of Public Health, particularly focused on our psychiatric services. And thank you, David, for giving us the tour, and Joel for allowing us to see staff at work. As you can see this morning, it's a lively group of people here that are seeking services. But what we are announcing today is something that Supervisor Farrell and I have been working on for some time. And as soon as we knew that we were going to get passage, we started working the details, the nuts and bolts on how to communicate with our public, particularly families of individuals that perhaps have gone through our criminal justice system and our emergency medical systems more than once, to allow them to play a role with us and with the judges and with our justice system and our community court system, perhaps to offer yet again I think a more compassionate approach to people who are dealing with mental illness. And of course, a lot of people are reporting in, and we see now a reflection in that as people use our newly refreshed 311 application, as well as our connections to our public health facilities to report people in to see if we can get health checks out on the street, and particularly focused on those individuals who do not look like they're handling themselves or in a situation where they can present danger to themselves or danger to each other, and certainly what a lot of people may call or may see as abnormal behavior, or simply behavior that kind of on a regular person basis kind of needs some attention. And so I am very happy not just to be here in this site, but to know that this is part of our expanded level of services. Our city is providing an additional $28 million this year in services that are needed. We have over $2.5 billion a year that are dedicated to social services in the city out of a $9 billion annual budget. And so within the public health, though, we know that we're more than challenged, particularly by those individuals that happen to come into contact with our emergency services well more than once. Now, what Laura's Law does is we want to make sure people know what that stands for. It is, of course, is modeled after a statewide effort that started in the state of Nevada and came to California, where the law requires that each jurisdiction, like San Francisco, each county, pass its own approval of Laura's Law, and then tries to figure out with state agencies, with federal agencies, and with our local partners how to approach with the involvement of family members of those that might be experiencing these health issues. And the new role here with Laura's Law is that medical professionals working with the families can actually focus on their individual relative and provide input about patterns and practices of the individual such that a judge and the health professional can service that particular individual, hopefully with a more sustainable approach. It does not require medication at all. What Laura's Law does is it allows a system that rather than depend totally on the individual's call about what he or she might be personally experiences, but it calls into the involvement family members and others who care for the individual that can weigh in so that at a hearing with a judge where some of this might happen, there will be some more assessments that are made with the hope that the individual involved can get the right treatment and a sustained treatment that will allow that person to be more successful. Also at this center happens to be not just medical treatment. As you saw, we opened the door to what they call the library, where on a daily basis people are trying to access to jobs. And that we know firsthand that having good jobs can oftentimes allow somebody to recover just as powerfully as family members and the people who really have their interests at heart with that individual, along with their medication or their counseling or whatever the health professionals can properly prescribe. This is what Laura's Law does, is it gets that additional avenue, and we know that there could be very good successes here, but we're also not signaling that this is the answer to everything. I've got to continue working with Supervisor Farrell and the entire board on not only having a healthy budget towards the health challenges of our individuals, but I also have to make sure that we have temporary housing, sustainable long-term housing. We are around the corner at the end of this year. We'll be answering the call on our veterans, on the chronic homeless veterans, and we intend to have 500 additional units on those that are coming through our navigation center, where we help individuals and groups of people hopefully end their homelessness on the streets, and that we are signaling to everyone to take advantage of the city's opportunity while we have a strong economy. Let's get more people off the streets in the right way and get them into proper services and supportive services, as well as into long-term housing. We intend to have the Navigation Center backed up by at least 500 additional units for individuals by the end of this year, and we'll continue working in the larger housing crisis for more housing to be preserved, evictions to be less, and certainly more new housing to be built and rehabilitated in the next 5 years. So with that, I want to just introduce someone who I've had a chance to work with on the board, very effective, and was the leader on the conversation at the board about Laura's Law. Not only did he get the support that was needed, but I think the conversation was done in such a respectful way that everybody in the city is asking, how can I be participating in the Laura's Law to make sure it works properly and to make sure it continues a reflection of what has been and continues to be the tradition of San Francisco, is that we lead by our compassion, and that is the deeper compassion that allows us to do more of this, to spend more of our city dollars, and to make sure we're doing it smarter. We will eventually get to more people on the streets, but we have to do it right. And we're not interested at all in the moving people from one corner to another. That's just not the way we do things here in the city. And we're going to take every opportunity, whether it's conventions, whether it's the Super Bowl, or whether it's our need just to better focus on getting people off the streets for their health reasons, for their own public safety, and certainly for the safety of neighborhoods. I want to introduce, of course, our Supervisor of District 2, Mark Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor Lee, and thanks everyone for being here today. You know, today marks a day after over a year of preparation, a day to celebrate the beginning of assisted outpatient treatment here in San Francisco, but also a day to remember that the hard work is now yet to come. And I want to thank Mayor Lee for his support, from my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors and the countless individuals and families, organizations both nationally and locally that were instrumental for the passage of Lohr's Law and the legislative process. And now we're going to be instrumental as we roll out AOT, or assisted outpatient treatment, here in San Francisco. You know, we have a mental health crisis across our country. In San Francisco, we see it on our streets every single day. And from my perspective, there's not enough that we can do for these individuals, for their families, and for our city to get these individuals the help that they need and to put them on their own 2 feet and on a path to better life. This all started from my view about 2 years ago when I was approached by a number of families here in San Francisco that had loved ones that were suffering from mental illnesses, and loved ones that they unfortunately, after years and years of trying, simply could not help, and they had no tools or resources to be able to help them. And after talking for a while and talking with the Wilcox family, where this law originated, we introduced Lohr's Law at the Board of Supervisors, and with the support of Mayor Lee and my colleagues, we were able to put it through. And it is so important for those here in San Francisco, and when we think about families, to make sure that they have the resources that they need and they feel that they are supported by their community, the city of San Francisco, and that as a city we are doing everything we can for these families to make sure that we help them. Because ultimately it's giving a choice, and it's making sure that we get those individuals that have mental health issues the help that they need. And when at times the reality is, if they're off medication and don't realize that they have mental health issues, it is a challenging situation for everybody around them. Assisted outpatient treatment is one tool in the tool shed to get these people the help that they need, the medications they need, the treatment, the wraparound services that they are going to receive here in this facility they need to put them on their own 2 feet. And I do want to thank so many people that were involved in this. Joe, who is here, Barbara Garcia from DPH, so many people in our city family. There have been a number of national and, as I mentioned, local health organizations from NAMI and NAMI SF, the Treatment Advocacy Center here in San Francisco. Jess Montejano from my staff was such a leader on this issue, and the countless families that stepped forward to tell their stories, to open up to the community so that we can not only help them, but the next generation of San Francisco families that really deserve this help. This is not a panacea for mental health here in San Francisco or anywhere. It is but a tool in our toolbox as a city of San Francisco, but I would suggest a very important one and something that everybody in our city deserves, and I very much look forward to having it being rolled out and the effects that it can have on our streets. So thank you, everyone, and I want to introduce the woman who's going to be leading our AOT program here in San Francisco for the next few years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you. My name is Angelica Almeida, and I'm a psychologist with the Department of Public Health and the Director of Assisted Outpatient Treatment here in San Francisco. As Supervisor Farrell noted, this is a new tool in our tool belt to assist and support individuals with mental illness as well as their families in the communities where they live. San Francisco's implementation of this law is unique and includes a goal of maximizing voluntary participation in services, as well as the adoption of an assisted outpatient treatment care team. The care team consists of a director, which is myself, a peer specialist, or someone who identifies as being a consumer of mental health services, and a family liaison, or someone who identifies as having a family member with mental illness. The two positions, the peer specialist and family liaison, are unique to San Francisco's program, and we feel are important for many different reasons. The first being that we feel that it'll help us be more effective in engaging individuals in the community and therefore reaching our goal of maximizing voluntary participation in treatment. Further, we feel that these positions embody recovery in our program, and all of the services that behavioral health services offer are based in principles of recovery and wellness, or this idea that we believe people can get better, and this is a new tool that we can utilize to help the unique strengths and needs of each individual on their path to recovery. In order to qualify for an assisted outpatient treatment program, an individual needs to meet strict legal criteria, including that they are an adult with a known mental illness who is not engaged in care and is on a downward spiral. They also must have a lack of compliance with treatment that is demonstrated by this either-or statement. Either their mental health has led to 2 or more psychiatric hospitalizations or incarcerations where they received mental health treatment within the last 3 years, or they have 1 or more documented threats, attempts, or acts of violence towards themselves or others within the last 4 years. Additionally, who can make a referral to the program is also outlined in the law and includes an adult who lives with the individual, a family member, which can be a parent, sibling, spouse, or adult child of the individual, the director of a mental health treatment facility where the individual lives, the director of a hospital where the individual is psychiatrically hospitalized, a licensed mental health provider who's providing treatment to the individual or supervising their care, and finally, a probation officer or parole officer who's assigned to supervise the individual on their caseload. Referrals will be accepted beginning Monday, November 2nd, and can be made either verbally or in writing. The toll-free number to make a referral will be 844-255-4097. Individuals can also review our webpage at www.sfdph.org/AOT for additional information about the history of assisted outpatient treatment and its implementation in San Francisco, as well as information about alternative resources that are available in our system of care, and a referral form that can be completed and faxed or emailed to the care team. Now, while our goal is certainly to maximize voluntary participation in services, we anticipate that there will be a need to, in some cases, to request a court order to order someone into outpatient care. The goal of this court order is to utilize the symbolic weight of the court to leverage someone into care, or this idea that just by nature of having a judge involved in the process, that somebody is more likely to be compliant with the treatment plan. And that is often referred to as the black robe effect. However, I think it's important to note that while a court order may be in place, should someone not be compliant with the treatment plan, they will not be held in contempt, they will not be arrested, and they will not be sent to the hospital unless they otherwise meet the involuntary hospitalization criteria. However, the care team will be working diligently to engage these individuals and offer them services and monitor them to determine if they need a higher level of care, such as hospitalization. Further, individuals who are court-ordered into treatment will be receiving services here at UCSF Citywide Case Management, which is well known for their amazing and well-respected services within the community. While the services that are required are outlined in the law, I think it's important to note that San Francisco has a history of having a strong and robust mental health care system, and that the services that are offered to assisted outpatient treatment clients or those court-ordered into care are also available on a voluntary basis. The goal of this program is really to get ahead of crisis, and it's in line with this idea that we don't need to let people get worse before we help them get better. And again, this is a new tool that we will have in our tool belt to be able to outreach individuals who are at heightened risk for incarceration or hospitalization and to offer them an alternative before they need that level of care. It has been a great privilege to work with this team, and without further ado, I would like to introduce the remainder of our care team, Cedric Fotso and Charles Houston, who will be speaking briefly about their roles within the team. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. And my name is Cedric Fotso, and my role within the AOT care team is to be the peer specialist. I have a message to share that I'm here right now, and it's very, very important for everyone to understand that living with a mental illness is a constant struggle in the life of a consumer. And given that, it's also very important to understand that stigma is one of the many obstacles to overcome when seeking care. And what is it that we're trying to do as a team? The goal is to reduce the limitation in the face of mental health, and at the same time, AOT will be very instrumental in engaging consumer and on the road to recovery based on their strength and their uniqueness. Also, at the same time, it is also important to understand that trauma is very real and common in the face of mental health. And one of the difficult ways is the fact that in terms of trauma, and it's very, very difficult to seek care and to really engage onto the road of recovery when it comes to that. So what is it that we're trying to do as a team? AOT at the same time will be very, very instrumental in tackling issues of stigma, and also at the same time to support consumer engage into the road of recovery by sharing values of acceptance and resiliency that are very important concepts in recovery. And at last, the message that I really want to share here today is the fact that recovery is not a destination but a journey. It's very important to understand that recovery does happen, and it does great changes in people's lives. And what we want to do, what is AOT going to be standing for? In recovery, AOT will be very instrumental in supporting and assisting individuals engage onto the road of recovery to be able to reap the benefit of care and at the same time unlock the limitless potential of recovery. And I'd like to end this note by saying that we do recover. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Charles Houston, and I'm the liaison for families, the whole family. Because when you see that people who take care of their loved ones, they have other people in the family also, such as children and infants. And they're part of the whole team of recovery. So what I'm going to be doing as part of the AOT team is to assist the family in understanding that there's care, that there's hope, and then we're going to work with their strengths. And being a consumer myself of having family members that I saw my parents take care of, and as a child, and then I had to step into the role as a teenager. And then
well, I guess we could disclose. All right, go back in public session. Right. All right, we're back in public session, and the Commission has voted that it will not disclose the details of what was discussed in connection with item number 3, other than to advise that the Commission made a finding unanimously that there was no probable cause. Turn to item 4, discussion and possible action regarding Commission activities relating to its
Excuse me. You actually need to take a motion not to disclose.
All right. We took the motion, but we took it in.
He's right, technically. You need to do that in open session and take public comment.
You want to make the motion again?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll take public discussion on that before we vote on it. All right, hearing no public discussion, the motion is carried unanimously. We're moving to item 4, discussion and possible action regarding Commission activities relating to its expenditure lobbyist ballot measure, Prop C. Essentially, there's the number of appearances required of either the Deputy Director or myself has pretty well dwindled to 0, with the election only a little over a week away. So I have really nothing to report other than to say that there were a number of sessions in the earlier part of October. Any public discussion on that? Turning to item 5, discussion and possible action on an annual report for fiscal year 2014-2015. And the deputy director or the interim director has provided a draft annual report. And do any of the commission members have any discussions or comments concerning the draft report? Yes, Commissioner Andrews.
So thank you very much for the work that you put into this. I very, very much appreciate it. And I just have a couple comments, and this may be just a decision or a stylistic something. Well, one piece of it is not stylistic. We, under the budget on page 11, we list out fiscal years from 1994 to 14-15, and that's our budget. And I'm wondering if it serves us better to have what we approved compared to what we spent. Generally, in an annual report, you'll put out your expenditures. Sometimes you will match it against budget, actuals against budget. So is this actually what we spent, or is this what we were approved for?
This was the actual budget, and so the actuals are a little bit different, but they're pretty much in line. The numbers I have are a little bit off by about $10,000. So,
okay.
So we could put, at least for this year, we could do the comparison of the budget and actuals.
Yeah, it's just always great to have a budget, but then see how well you did against your budget. And then the only other thing that I was thinking about, and this is just a choice, that generally speaking, foundational documents, governing documents that you have for an organization, particularly an annual report, is a reflection of what happened in the past years. And then you usually have another foundational organizational document that is forward-thinking. Often it's a strategic plan. It is your proposed budget. And I see that we always put future initiatives in? That's a forward-thinking thing that sometimes you want to be careful not to. I understand that we may be even mandated or mandated ourselves to taking care of some of these things, but it just generally is mixing the past with the future. And you usually save those for another document that would possibly provide more context around why you're doing what you're doing.
Certainly.
Just wondering.
Well, I know in the past that the future initiatives has been included. I tried to be a little careful about this, given the sort of where we are as a commission, right? So I said instead of will focus, which is what has happened in the past, I put may focus, and just identified some of the things that are on the work plan that you guys adopted back in the spring, but also just some of the ongoing things that are obviously continuing in nature. But I would think that, within the next few months, once sort of the ED position is sort of settled and all that stuff, there would probably be a similar work plan type thing that would probably establish what would happen for at least the next year or so. But
I'm fine either way. Generally it's
good
decision, organizational decision.
Any other Commissioner Keene?
Yeah, just a suggestion, Mr. Chair, that in regard to at page 5, where you have the reference in the second paragraph to our having put Proposition C on the ballot, I think our putting something on the ballot is sufficiently important to maybe put in a couple of more things here, and I would like to suggest a couple of more things. And that is where it says, at its June 29th, 2015 meeting, the Commission voted to place this proposal on the November 3rd, 2015 ballot. It's a little peremptory. I'd like it to say that at its June 29th, 2015 meeting, after a hearing and after public interested persons hearings, the Commission unanimously voted to place it on the ballot. It just seems like almost sort of as an afterthought, we did something as important as to put something on the ballot. I'd like to show that there was a fair amount of consideration that went into it, as there was. There was a lot of discussion and interested persons hearings, and that then that the vote was unanimous.
Sure.
I have I second Commissioner Keene's comment about the last part of it, but I'm also troubled by the way the phrasing in the first part, which sounds like it was sort of an ad hoc idea of Commissioner Keene coming out of the blue, and I think we ought to put a little history in that he was specifically asked by the Commission to look at, I think we started with the requirements of the former Prop J, which had been pretty much gutted, and that when you came back with your report, it was decided that, well, we'll focus just on the expenditure lobbyist provisions, putting off the other ones for a future date. But so that I think it should show the number of meetings at which this subject matter, which came to be Proposition C, came into play. Because as I think you know, Bernardi, that the principal objections that have been raised against Prop C by its opponents is that this was something done in the middle of the night, that there was no public input, and that nobody was given a chance to discuss it, which is just contrary to the facts. And I think we don't want to put anything in this report that sort of lends credence to that concept. So I strongly would suggest that that paragraph be expanded and redrafted along the lines we've discussed. And I have a question related to that, where there's a discussion about the meeting at which Mr. Stern and Mr. Cook testified. I don't think it was limited to a specific item that's referred to there. I think that this Prop C, what became Prop C, was also part of the discussion at that time. And that's what we've referred to as the hearings, was the fact that, because I think it was at the time that Commissioner Keene made his report that then was set up the public meeting with Professor Cook and Mr. Stern.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We discussed the matter itself of going forward with the expenditure lobby requirement over the course of two hearings, two of these hearings, and in between a number of interested persons hearings and quite a bit of back and forth on behalf of members of the public, organizations like Friends of Ethics, the civil grand jury. And so I'd also concur with the chair that it's where the way it's proposed, it's almost put down, it's almost like a throwaway line. Finally, acting as an ad hoc committee of one, Commissioner Keene developed a proposal. Like all of a sudden I had a light bulb go on over my head one night as we were here, and we get two sentences about why C is on the ballot. Let's put in the full history of it, Mr. Minority.
Fine with me. I would just say that,
when does this have to be filed?
it just has to be filed annually. I mean, we can bring it back next month if you want, or you could delegate sort of responsibility to the chair to approve the final language.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Any other comments on the Ethics Commission report? The other comment I have is on the future initiatives. I recall one of the future initiatives that was discussed and was the whistleblower statute. possible changes to the language. And in
That's true.
fact, I think Commissioner Herr at some time in the future will provide us with some report concerning that.
That's right. Mr. Minardi and I are working on it.
So I think that should be in there. And I think there should be the language or the charge that was given to Commissioner Keene concerning looking at Prop J and the related issues that decided to put off and just deal with the expenditure lobbyists.
Yes, and that is ongoing. That will surface next year, Mr. Chair.
I would suggest we include those in the. Do I hear a motion to approve the draft other than the amendments that be made subject to my approval? Or however you want to word it?
Yeah, I'll move that we adopt the changes proposed by the commissioners, subject to final approval by the chair.
Second.
Public discussion?
Good evening, Commissioners. Charlie Marsteller here representing FOE. We have several comments, and some of it may require background, but I'm going to quickly go through them, so get your pencil and paper handy. If you have any other questions, you can ask me. I'm going to start sounding like a teacher again. But in any event, when you're doing your this type of a document, it's an opportunity for you to pitch your ideas and what it is you're doing to the public. So the public gets a sense of who you are and what you're doing and what they're getting for their money. To be very candid, it's also a research document. It's also good for auditing. So in the past, there was a guy who used to go from department to department, and he was originally with the city attorney's office, and then he retired and went into business writing annual reports. And oftentimes, these were standard templates with a basically good public relations type of an approach. And I think he was, in fact, more of a PR consultant at that point. I'm not suggesting that you put that hat on because you're supposed to be objective, and I realize and respect that. But I do want to say there's, for instance, no mention in your fines. You only mentioned something like $30,000 and the fines, and you actually didn't include a mention about the 191K decision, which would significantly increase that number. Whether it's actually been realized, that ball is now out of your hands and over at the City Hall for collection. Also, there were, in fact, 10 hearings or hearing-like processes regarding Prop C. So you did a very robust outreach on Prop C. You held numerous interested persons meetings. You held public sessions during our meetings on Monday nights, and so you were quite aggressive in outreaching to the public, and it's important that the public understands that this thing going to the ballot doesn't occur out of the blue, that in fact it has methodology behind it. And I support both the chairman and Commissioner Keene's comments on that. You, in general, you've done a lot more robust looking at outreach, and you should note to the public those efforts and those improvements, because that's what you're here for, is to outreach to the public ultimately and to talk to your bosses, the citizens of the city. You also basically taken up the question of Prop J, and you plan to study that, so that should be noted in the report.
Time is about run.
I'll try to pass this on to someone else, but they don't know it as well as I do. But I'm sure Mr. Pilpel has some comments. So meantime, I'll brief someone else on the balance what we wanted to say. There's about 4 more points. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'm next. David Pilpel speaking as an individual. Number of comments. I think the logo at the beginning is a little off-center. It's driving me nuts. Also on page 1, I would put Jesse's name under Chair Rennie. I think he's the acting director, and I think that would be appropriate rather than at the end as respectfully submitted. And I would also put the date on the cover when it's finalized. And be sure to not just send it to the mayor and the board, but 2 copies to the library. They are always supposed to get annual reports. On a couple of other points, I agree with your discussion about Prop C. I would actually add an additional line to say this measure will appear as Proposition C, because there's a reference at the end of the report to implementing Prop C, and it doesn't tie it back to say that that's what it got lettered. There was a discussion later on in the report about the whistleblower report from the civil grand jury, but there was nothing that I saw here about last year's civil grand jury report and the additional follow-up that was sent. So I think tying this back to other grand jury reports and the changes that the commission and the staff have made as a result is good, or would be good. Let's see. I was interested in this other section on the whistleblower ordinance. There was actually a disclosure, I think, here that there was a whistleblower investigation conducted. I don't think I knew that beforehand, and I'm not sure that this reports what the result was. So I'm not sure how much more you can say about that, but where there's an opportunity to make a disclosure after the fact of the result of an investigation without compromising sources or methods, I think it would be good to do so. The chart about the budget, fiscal 08-09 has a typo. It doesn't have 09 there. And the discussion about the staff doesn't completely track to the organization chart. So where the titles, whatever the title was of the individual, I think that should be properly reflected in both cases rather than there being some discrepancy there. With regard to each individual program, there was some quantitative discussion of the number of filings and the amount of fees and fines, but it's not consistent. So on page 5, under the permit consultant section, it says out of 90 reports filed, 22 were filed after the deadline. Does not indicate how much was assessed in late fees or how much was collected. I think for each of those programs where there are quantitative statistics that can be reported, I would include how many people reported, how much was received, how many were late, how much was assessed, et cetera. So that this really is more of a cumulative executive director's report in terms of quantity, and also has a qualitative analysis of the programs. And I think the qualitative stuff is in here, but I was just looking to beef up the quantitative. On the investigations and enforcement, I would add a chart similar to the chart in the monthly ED's report that shows for June 30th, 2014, what was then pending, what were all the transactions during the reporting period of 14-15, how many complaints were received or initiated in each category, how many were resolved in each category, and then what was remaining as of June 30th, 2015. So there's a cumulative total, and that you can see all of the activity. Doesn't disclose any of the specifics, the complainant respondent, but just the information about the activity and the investigations and enforcement. And I think that there was one other typo, and I'll look for it while you're hearing from the next speaker.
I think you've used your time.
Thank you. Thanks.
Eileen Hansen, former commissioner. Thank you. I have a number of comments, and I appreciate that this is a first draft. And I guess my first suggestion would be that this come back to the commission at the next meeting so that some more work could be done on the report, and then you could take public comment again before you finalize it. In the interest of time, I'll just start at the back with future initiatives. And as some of the previous comments have been stated, I'm looking for a more robust report and more specifics, both in what we've done, because I think there's more that you have done. I shouldn't say we, I'm sorry. There's more that could be reported on, and I keep looking for specifics, and I don't see the specifics. Your conversation about Prop C is indicative of that. But it also, in terms of future initiatives, I look at this list and I think that the Commission has a commitment to being more robust, has a commitment to taking on more items, and yet I don't see those here. So, for example, you state hiring a permanent executive director. That is true. And what is also true is that signals potentially a very large culture shift in the organization. So it's more than just hiring, but it's looking at the Commission as a whole. It's making sure that staff morale is paid attention to. It's looking at what proactive initiatives we might be able to take under, or you might be able to take under a new director. I wonder specifically, for example, about the process of deciding what goes into future initiatives. So, for example, at the last Commission meeting, we had a conversation about complaints and whether or not it would be important to the Commission to look at the process of hearing complaints. So, for example, when complaints are filed that would have a bearing on the upcoming election, is there a way to take some of those complaints maybe out of order? Because if they're not decided on until after the campaign season is over, almost what is the point? So various commissioners concurred with my suggestion that that process be looked at. So that ought to be kept track of somewhere and put on this list of potential future initiatives. There are a number of others. The public has said that outreach in general from the Commission is insufficient. What do we want to do to create a more robust outreach program? How do we be proactive in terms of looking at policy initiatives and suggesting legislation as opposed to waiting for legislation to come to the Commission? I have others, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Lena Schmidt with Friends of Ethics. Coming this late in the process, I'm going to repeat a couple of things, but I'll just say them quickly. One is what you've all said about the discussion of Measure C and how Measure C got to the ballot. The way I'd phrase it as, it was 4 lines, but there were 18 lines talking about the interns and what the interns had done. So I think that as you look at it, it's not just making sure that it includes everything that you talked about, that it was a robust public discussion and that you all were involved in it and you all passed it unanimously, but also how is it seen in relation to the other activities that went on, because this was one of the biggest steps that you had taken this past year. And just seeing the space difference was pretty astounding. I also was going to talk about the fines seem very low in terms of $38,000 and what's going on with that. The one that I would talk about, and Mr. Pelpel talked about it also, which is I tend to be a data person, and so I want to see the data, and right now it's all in narrative, so you might think about doing some of the charts instead. And what the annual report provides, and you will see it in many annual reports, is a 3 to 5 year running trend line. So that as you look at all your programs, not just some of them, but as you look at all your requirements, how they're being implemented, and what fines or what enforcement actions are going on, if you can watch a trend line for 3 or 4 years, it's going to tell you a whole lot about how the Commission is acting and what's going on, and most especially what programs are successful or enforceable and where are you having some problems and therefore should be looked at. I mean, one of the things, for instance, to use as an example, you have the 10 years, I believe it was, of the budget. But when you look at the budget is fairly flat. And I say, well, wait a minute. I've heard so much over the past years that I've been dealing with the Ethics Commission or learning about the Ethics Commission that they always can't get things done because they don't have enough staff. So why aren't we asking for more money so that we can get more staff? So it's those kinds of things come out of looking at trend analysis. The only item that I would add to what also has been talked about already in terms of future activities is I did think that there was some action on your part, or at least interest on your part, on hiring a commission secretary. And so maybe you want to think about putting that out as a action. And for Charlie, I'll finish up. At one point, we also had multilingual forms and pamphlets been talked about being put out there. Right now, it's still all in English, and we should try to get multi-language issues out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just a couple of other points to add to what's already been said. One of the things that is recognizable to Friends of Ethics is that there is a more robust effort to do a little more outreach, but there certainly could be more, especially to unions. And develop trust with unions. One of the other things that hadn't been mentioned in the annual report was the conversion to the electronics in the way of Form 700. So I think it's important to show the things that have been accomplished in a short period of time. That's especially important to building trust not only with unions but with the community of San Francisco, and to help change the image of the Ethics Commission is going to be very important. So thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, there's a motion. I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Turning to item number 6, discussion of acting executive director's report. Dr. Minardi?
Just as submitted, nothing. We're in the middle of campaign time, so there's a lot going on. Happy to answer any questions.
Any commissioner have any questions or comments?
Mr. Minority, on point number 10, it sounds like there was discussion at the city level about the moving a block of city departments onto a two-year. Can you just talk a little bit by way of background of, in at least some of the meetings that you sat in, what ultimately, I can certainly surmise what benefit there can come from that, but I just wanted to hear from you.
Well, I haven't sat in many meetings with respect to this. We got the day before this report was due, we got a call from the mayor's office that essentially told us that we we are one of 37 departments that they had chosen for the next step in this ultimate goal of getting all the city departments on this 2-year plan. And so we had a brief discussion. That was the first time I heard about it. Well, I knew generally about the general motion, but it was the first time I heard that we were one of those designated departments. So the mayor's office, we have a pending meeting to find out more and to talk with our budget analysts more about sort of the process. But essentially, what's the most interesting is sort of the way that the second year budget might be able to be changed a little bit as the ongoing needs change. But essentially, we're going to have to put in, just like we did last year, our proposal for 2 years. And what they're saying is that it's essentially fixed.
And in many ways, I understand how that can seem to hamstring you particularly when you're advocating for more resources. We've heard from the public it's an ongoing issue for us talking about resources. It's a priority for me. The commission secretary I'm paying attention to. And specifically, as we move forward with a permanent executive director, I would, want to prioritize how we and identify how we advocate for the true needs of the commission. And obviously, there will be a window of opportunity somewhere in this period where we can do some advocacy. But certainly having to put in a 2-year budget doesn't mean it certainly diminishes your opportunity to go year over year and put your request in. We'll have to be quite strategic as we move forward.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Turning to item 7. Item for future meetings, Commission. Public comment on the director's report. I'm sorry.
Thank you. David Pilpel, speaking as an individual. Actually, both of my comments are related to budget. On item 10, I would hope once you select a new director that we have some public discussions about direction, initiatives, where we're going with this, and in particular in the December to February timeframe, so that there isn't just a budget proposal brought to the Commission for the January meeting for adoption without a lot of discussion. I think this is the year where we need to have some discussion. It may take 2 Commission meetings to talk about ideas and then to formalize that in terms of a number for a budget request. So I hope you'll plan for that time so all of us can be involved in that. So that was item 10. On item 9, related to that, I'm hoping that as part of the budget work for next year, that the staff has an opportunity to reorganize the sub-object codes. And I know Commissioner Keene will remember objects and sub-objects in the budget system, because these really, the breakouts for revenues really go to older programs and don't have the permit consultants and some of the other newer items here. I think it's helpful for you, perhaps for the public, to see for each program what the fees are, what the fines are, and then, if there's a small amount for other. But right now there's kind of a large section for other ethics general and other ethics fines, and then unallocated. So for each program, again, if you can have or create budget revenue sub-objects, that would help for reporting purposes. No issue too small. Thank you very much.
Eileen Hansen. On page 2, I guess it is, number 3, Campaign Finance Disclosure Program, I'm wondering if it's possible under status to have any more information. We have on number 1, one of the filers is at small claims court, but we have no information on the others. So I think this has been the pattern, but others previously have raised the $191,000 fine or forfeiture of Supervisor Farrell. It would be useful, I think, to the public to understand where it is, along with the other ones, and if there's some way to report on where they are in process. I think that would be useful to the public. On the next page, on number 9, revenues report, we say that we have received 56% of anticipated revenues, and yet we're in October. So I'm wondering if there's a plan to receive the remaining revenues, if they'll just, because of how the budget works, they'll just come at the end of the year, as sometimes happens with revenue, or do we interpret that as we're in trouble because we've only received 56% of anticipated revenues? It would also be useful to compare that to expenditures, so again, we understand if there's an issue there with being so short on revenues. Next page, number 11, under outreach and education, I spoke earlier to the need for more robust outreach. This second paragraph says that an email invitation was sent to approximately 50 union representatives, inviting them to sign up to be on the Commission's IP list. I had understood earlier that there was a significant effort to reach out to nonprofit organizations as well as unions, because, as you know, that's been the issue around Prop C, that nonprofits were not outreached to. And I disagree with some of my colleagues in terms of having robust outreach around Prop C. Many nonprofits did not know that this process was going on and subsequently are running a fairly robust campaign against Prop C. So I'm curious if we actually did outreach to nonprofits or just to unions. And then finally, the staff project calendar on the last page. I appreciate that. I think it's a great idea. I know we're holding on putting dates until we have an executive director. I would just ask that once we move forward on that be filled in, and that there be every month a report on how we're doing on the progress on that calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. I think just to respond to the outreach, my understanding is that the acting director did send IP notices or invitations to a number of organizations other than the unions. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, we're basically spacing it out on a month basis. We have Pat Peterson, who's sort of taking the charge, but we started with political groups, and we sent out about notices to about 60, which also includes a few nonprofits. The next source, a bunch of information we had was the unions. And so now we should have in fact, the list is probably on my desk right now, but we have a list of nonprofits that's going to happen next. So we had to take it in digestible chunks. They're all about 50 to 60 groups that we're sending out to at any given time.
Thank you. All right, let's turn. I don't think there's any action.
There's more public comment.
Oh, is there more?
Charlie Marsteller again. Let's see. I'm sure that in the delinquent accounts division of the city that person maybe has to write up a report maybe quarterly or something to his supervisors to keep the supervisors abreast of status. So it might be that you can tap into that. Those documents may not be public, but it's something that you might be able to have personally. I'm sure they would trust you. On outreach, the planning department maintains a very large database on community organizations because their outreach under CEQA particularly has to be extremely robust. So you might just be able to tap in to their pre-existing list or even their database and do a solicitation for people that want to be kept abreast of ethics. And then in that letter, you want to be sure that you indicate to these people that you have the power to put initiatives on the ballot and that this is the opportunity for these organizations to come and keep themselves advised of what it is you're doing, since you do have these unusual powers that most people wouldn't think of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right. Turning next to item 7, items for future meetings. Anyone, any commissioners have any suggestions or comments?
I do want to make sure that we have a continued discussion. I don't know if it's the right time to at least start thinking about a commission secretary and thinking about a job description, or just start doing a draft of some of the work that would fall under that position. And I just would rather be prepared for it, so that if there was a funding opportunity that came our way, we could submit it and we would be well prepared in understanding what the roles and responsibilities are, and then even maybe doing a little bit of, and this may happen over time, find out some of the responsibilities of other commission secretaries. I'm sure the police commission secretary is quite busy, and I'm sure that job description is probably non-exhaustive. but just to get a little bit more of an understanding of what that position would do and the role they would play.
I'd like to second her. I know it's not a motion, but I agree that the idea of us having a secretary is important. We should have a secretary. You referenced the police commission secretary. I was on the police commission, and we relied very much upon the commission secretary. In regard to many of the things that the police commission secretary did, they would parallel a lot of the activities that we do in terms of investigations of individuals, what the status of those investigations are, where they are now, what complaints have been coming in, how the staff has been responding to those complaints. We should have a secretary. It's a big vacuum, I think. There should be someone who assists us, who is not part of the staff itself and is not, certainly, like for years, relying upon the past executive director to fill that role and other roles, I think was a big mistake, and wound up losing a lot of the confidence of the public in this commission. And I think we could get a lot of that back if we had a secretary.
One thing I'd like to add is thinking about whether we should have a couple meetings to talk about the budget, both because of the reasons that Commissioner Andrews raised and from the public. I know traditionally we've done it in one meeting, but it might make sense to have two so that we can really do an analysis and have it come back to us.
Chair Rennie, did you want to talk about the meeting schedule? I know that you had mentioned that, or I'm not sure.
Well, you mean the November?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to discuss the meeting, but that relates to item number 10.
Yeah, actually, if I could just, it may be helpful to talk about the November regular meeting and whether you want to meet at that time.
Well, the question, I guess, for the commissioners is, our regular meeting is scheduled for November 23rd, I believe it is, which is the Monday of the week of Thanksgiving. And I had asked City Attorney Shen to poll the board to see whether or not you would be available, if you wanted to reschedule that meeting for November 20th, which is a Friday.
Right, specifically also just the afternoon of Friday,
yes.
The 20th. We would have a potential meeting room available between 1 and 5 on that day.
Right.
And a couple of the commissioners did respond, but a couple haven't, so I wasn't quite sure whether we should finalize the reservation for the November 20th or just proceed with the regular meeting date, which is fine too.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't clear to me that was to replace. I'm available on the 20th if that's what. If it's just the regular meeting, though, I prefer the evening, but I'm available either date.
I'd prefer the regular meeting as calendared.
Pardon me?
I'd prefer the regular meeting as calendared on that.
Staying on the
Monday.
23rd?
Yes. Either date works for me, the 20th or the 23rd. I thought the 20th was a choice for the other meeting, for a special meeting.
That also was a date.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't understand that you were asking to make that an alternative meeting, but the 20th or the 23rd is fine.
Well, is it the desire of the commissioners that we just have that meeting on the 23rd in spite of the fact that it is the Thanksgiving week?
Yes.
Yes, for me.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
We will go now, keep that possible November 20th date if it's necessary after our November 13th meeting.
Okay, so hang on to that date as well.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to say that Commissioner or Chair Rennie, so I have a red eye on that on the 23rd. So I'm happy to be a part of the meeting, but I'm also quite interested in making that red eye as well. So.
When you say a red eye, what
That's 11.
How red is it?
It's 11. It's 11,
Oh, okay,
11:30.
well,
So
we should-
hopefully
You'll make it.
You'll make it.
Okay.
I'm on at 10:30 tonight. Am I going to make that?
Okay.
I hope so. All right, item 7,
Public
I mean 8.
Sorry, public comment.
All right, on future items, yes, I'm sorry.
David Pilpel, as an individual, two things. I appreciate the discussion you just had about the November meeting. You might want to have a similar discussion next month about the December meeting, whether to hold that at the regular time at the end of December or not. And that also impacts the two discussions possibly about the budget. If you don't have a regular December meeting, you'll figure it out. In general, on these items for future meetings, the minutes sort of capture the discussion, but I haven't found a place where these items sort of get put, whether it's in the work plan, somewhere in the ED's report, or just on a list of things that have been requested that either have been calendared or that may happen in the next 6 months or in the future. If you could figure out a way to just capture these things, like last month you discussed enforcement procedures, and there was discussion now about commission secretary and other things, just a place to capture those for you, for the staff, for the public. That would be nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen Hansen. 4 items I would suggest for future meetings. 1, as we've talked about, a discussion about outreach. 2, discussion about the complaint process. And for me, what's involved in the complaint process that I think bears review is a number of things. But 1 would be the information that's reported out once a complaint is resolved, what's reported out to the public. 2, whether the commission is proactively taking a stance to be proactive about complaints. So instead of just waiting for complaints to arrive at the commission, if there's something that appears in public that the commission or a member or two of the commission feels is important to review, that is something that the commission prioritizes. So I'm not sure if I made myself clear, but rather than being so complaint-driven, as I think the commission is, looking at what is happening politically in the city. And if there's something that the commission feels is important to investigate, you don't wait for a complaint. You take that on yourselves, which we know the commission can do, but it just doesn't generally happen. 3, the annual report, again, I'd like to ask that be calendared at next meeting so there can be more public comment before it's finalized. And then 4, typically in past years, and I don't know the last time it happened, there was an annual retreat at the beginning of a year to determine the priorities of the commission. And I think that would be particularly appropriate and necessary with a new executive director coming in. So it's a time for the commission to meet with the executive director, determine the priorities, get to know each other a little bit. It's a public meeting, but it's a half-day or maybe full-day meeting where you really get to have some of those larger discussions, at least a beginning of what you could take on in your calendar in the year. How many large policy items can you handle? How many smaller items? So you begin to map out the year together. Thank you.
Back to Eileen's point, I think she made a good one. And that is, it's been rather amazing to see major things come up in the press. And then I'd call the executive director and say, is the commission investigating that? And they said, no, we haven't received a complaint. Because the public would always find it very confusing if they read a major in-depth investigative report in the press and not see their local government taking some kind of an action or particularly even interested. Now, I think in the past you were under-resourced. I'm not sure that you have a lot of resourcing now to do robust, proactive investigation. But that's something for the budget, and that's something for the new ED. And this question is a good one for the ED as well, because heretofore, you don't respond. I've been told many times we don't initiate, you have to submit a complaint. And I can't tell you how many I have over 20 years.
Eileen Hansen again. I apologize. I left out one of the items that I think is really important in the complaint review or investigations and enforcement, and that is the process and the procedures and the timing. So back to the issue of if there are complaints filed that may have a bearing on the results of an election, that there be some procedure and policy developed where you're able to take those ahead of other complaints that may have been filed first. Thank you.
Turning to the minutes of the September 28th, 2015 meeting. Commissioners have any additions or corrections? I had one. I may have said this, but I don't recall. And you turn to under item 6, discussion and possible action regarding the commission's search for a new executive director. In the third paragraph, it has me stating that applicants will be provided with 13 questions in advance of the interview. If I said that, that's a misstatement. They were provided with, I believe, 4 questions in advance of the interview. There were 13 questions that were given to Commissioner Andrews and myself to use as sort of our basis for questioning the candidates that we were interviewing. So that should reflect that is what I should have said if I didn't say it. Other than that, I'm happy with the minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Any second?
Second was.
Second.
And public comment?
David Pilpel. Several items. On item 2, towards the bottom, I believe Diane Feinstein has 2 N's. Page 3, the discussion about the ED search. I believe that's a committee. This is a commission, so it would be a committee of the commission. I don't think it's a subcommittee. I think it's a committee. So I would suggest that those references be to the search committee. On page 4, my public comment on item 8, I think it needs an A there. David Pilpel stated that Ms. Alim was a great employee and that she will be missed. Otherwise, it just makes me sound Eastern European. Nothing wrong with that, but, she was a great employee, I'm saying. Never mind. On page 5, in the closed session, and this was a comment I made relative to the previous minutes, the reference that acting ED Mainardi left the hearing room at 7:48 doesn't make clear what item he did not participate in. If there's a way to tie that to he was present for items 1 through 3 but not 4 or 5 or something, that would be in compliance with the Sunshine Ordinance. And in the previous paragraph where it says all commissioners, et cetera, remained in the hearing room, I believe that should say Commissioners Rennie, Her, and Hayon, since the other 2 commissioners were absent for the meeting. So it really just needs to reflect who was present in closed session for each item. Thank you.
All right, I would suggest that we make those changes to the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Call the question on the minutes as amended. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? They're unanimously approved. Turn to item 9, which is discussion and possible action regarding complaints received or initiated by the Ethics Commission refers to 4 complaints, and the question first is whether or not we should discuss those in closed session.
Excuse me, Chair Rennie. So in terms of the public comment that we need to take before moving to closed session, if I could just make one suggestion, and that is to take public comment on items 9 and 10 together. So if there are people who want to make public comment on number 10, they don't have to stick around and wait out the closed session on number 9.
I was going to deal with 9 and then go to 10 before we go into closed session to get their approval.
I apologize if I jumped the gun. Sorry,
anticipating. I just thought I would take them one at a time, but say that we're going to deal with both 9 and 10,
right? Assuming
that the commission votes to take both in closed session.
Thank you very much.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that we go into closed session for, you want to do it one at a time, for item 9.
Second.
Any discussion, any public comment?
David Pilpel, just something I'm confused about. We saw Ms. Sweet earlier, and I believe, Chair Rennie, you made reference to her having an item in connection with item 9. I believe at the last commission meeting, there was to be a hearing on the merits regarding Ms. Sweet and her campaign for supervisor 2010, and that item was continued by the commission chair at the request of the respondent. So my understanding is that that hearing on the merits is what is still before the commission. Am I confused? Have there been subsequent events that you can't disclose?
Oh, you may be absolutely right. I'll ask Executive Director Minardi, because you are refreshing my recollection that hers was to be a public session.
Right.
But it is not on the agenda.
Thank you.
That's correct, and Chair Rennie exercised discretion to put it off one more month.
We did this time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so whatever we're dealing with her is not one of the items in item 9. Hers is still at a hearing on the merits, which we will hear at the next meeting or at some point in the future.
I mistake.
Okay.
I was mistaken in saying it was in 9.
It's okay. All
Yeah,
good.
thanks.
Okay.
A question though: is Ms. Sweet
she's aware?
Clear about this now? Because she was here earlier.
Yeah, I don't think I'm at liberty to disclose exactly why why she attended tonight, but she's clear about what's going on.
Thanks.
Okay, I don't think I had anything else on item 9, not knowing what these are about. You're going to take up item 10 next before going into the closed session?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll hold it. Thank you.
Okay. And I'll turn to item, I'll call, yes, public
Sorry,
comment.
can I, a quick comment on 9, two questions, I guess. One is, if you could do your best to let us know, those of us who will be waiting to come back, about how long we should wait, that would be great. And 2, I do believe that there's a public interest in knowing the decision that you make, and so I would just ask you to report out as much as you feel comfortable. At the last commission meeting, those of us who were here were told that you couldn't report on some items, but that there would be a report on the website the next day or shortly. So it's confusing to me as to why you couldn't report to the members of the public who are here, but you could report publicly on the website. So if you can clarify that, I would appreciate it.
Well, I believe what we intend to do, but again, subject to how the commissioners feel about it, is that to the extent that we, for example, didn't disclose the discussions in item 3, I think it was 3, yes, but we did give the ultimate conclusion of the discussions, that was the disposition. And to the extent that we can do that with these 4 items, we will do so.
I appreciate that, and I guess if there's anything you intend to disclose publicly at some future point, well, let me clarify. let's say, tomorrow on the website because you made a decision tonight, it would be appreciated if you would also disclose that tonight. So that you're not saying there's any difference in what you disclose. If there's something to disclose, you will disclose it tonight as well as on the website.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I guess your question was as to when we anticipate you could come back. I suppose my guess would be, what, 8:15? What time's your flight?
That sounds great. Mine's at 10:30, so 8:15 sounds great to me.
Yeah, right. It probably won't be before 8:15.
Okay.
But hopefully it'll be close to that.
All right, thank you.
No further comment. I'll call the question. All in favor that we go into closed session?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimously approved. That, as to item 9, we'll go into closed session. Turning to item 10, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the Commission's appointment of a new executive director. Do I hear a motion as to whether that should go in closed session?
So moved. Second.
Public discussion.
David Pilpel. So if you could just explain to at least the public that's here what your intentions are with item 10. My understanding is that you had a first round of interviews at the committee with 5 applicants. I don't know if you're discussing those or having further interviews, or you talked about having a subsequent meeting on November 20th. So I'm just trying to understand the process so that could inform my and perhaps others' public comment at this point.
The intention is tonight simply to provide the commissioners with the resumes and background of the individuals who we are inviting to meet with the full commission on November 13th.
13th, okay.
And that we are keeping open November 20th if for some reason the commissioners feel they want some further meetings concerning the hiring of an executive director. Part of the question is that even if we arrive at a decision on the 13th, there has to be some communication between the candidate and HR to work out the details before we can announce that we have hired a new executive director. But we contemplate arriving at a decision, hopefully, on the 13th.
Okay.
There may not be a public disclosure prior to November 20th or November 23rd.
What I would suggest, if I'm not at that meeting on the 13th, is that you disclose, if you've made a choice, that you've made a choice, not who the individual is, until the final acts have been taken, and then you can announce that on the website or however else. But just the fact of a selection would be good news and welcome to, I think, all of us, all of you. Okay. So I hope you'll share the information with the other commissioners, and maybe sometime in the next 3 weeks we'll have a new director. That would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor of going into closed session with item 10, which is included in my estimate of 8:15 or 8:30 being going back into public session.
All right. All right.
Let's do it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously carried that we will go into closed session.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
Pedestrian fatalities aren't just numbers. They're friends and family.
Our brother Dylan was killed while riding his bicycle on May 23rd, 2013.
Give safety a second look. Look twice before entering an intersection.
When you show up to vote at your local polling place on Election Day, everything seems to be running smoothly. But there are a lot of details involved in running a polling place, and yours may have only a few workers who appear to be on their own. What happens if their poll location is locked at 6 a.m. when they arrive? What can they do if a voting machine malfunctions, or they find they don't have the right supplies for people to vote? Who can they turn to for help? Actually, these poll workers have a large, well-organized support structure managed by the Department of Elections. Let's take a look behind the scenes and see how running hundreds of polling places in San Francisco on Election Day is made as smooth and seamless as possible. Before a polling place can open at 7 a.m. on Election Day, it needs voting machines and support supplies. Delivery trucks gather a week before at the department's warehouse to load up equipment and supplies.
So, in a perfect world, we're going to have 3 trucks set up to load. Okay, there's going to be a DOE here with a scanner. Once he scans his bin and his insight, he'll tell you okay.
These trucks will deliver to between 380 and 576 polling places around the city, depending on the nature of the election.
So right now we're loading polling place delivery trucks. These trucks contain all the items, all the equipment that a polling place will need for voters on Election Day. Voting booths, tables, chairs, informational materials, and most importantly, voting equipment. Those pods, as we call them, you see there, contain the Insight voting machine. It's precinct specific, and these items are scanned and verified that they go to the correct precincts as they're loaded onto the trucks.
So the scanner that they're using is going to be used right before it goes on the lift gate.
Because these voting machines are set up to handle certain ballots at certain polling places in the city, it's very important that they go on in a correct order on the correct truck.
So don't push the bins once the gate's up. Don't push the bins on the truck to get the gate back down a little more. No, because this driver knows that that's the order. He's going to expect that to be that way.
We can't deliver these machines to the wrong polling places or they won't work for the ballots at that polling place.
Now, the driver has to remember he always has to pull from his right.
So that's why we have optical scanning, asset tracking, and management system. All right, 7604. 7604. Every time we move a voting component, we track its location and the handling in our system.
A week before Election Day, 7 to 10 trucks roll out every day to deliver about 8 polling packages to different polls around the city.
Hello, Department of Elections, dropping off polling place equipment.
Using the scanning management system, a department employee checks off each polling place to make sure all have their voting machines and supplies. On Election Day, what happens if a poll worker discovers at 6 a.m. that the door is locked at the polling place? On Election Day, the rather sedate City Hall cafeteria is transformed into a busy hive of activity. Teams of election employees work to settle any issue that may arise in the field.
This is the election center, is what we call the election center, and it's essentially a well-organized phone bank that we put together before every election. And then on election day, the poll workers can call in and ask for help and any procedural issue or ask for more resources. The very first calls we'll get in the day are the polling place is locked. Often enough, the polling place owners are a little bit tardy compared to the poll workers to open up.
The poll worker dispatch team, comprised of 60 to 80 standby poll workers, including bilingual workers, are stationed in the South Light Court, ready to be dispatched to any polling place with missing or possibly sick workers.
Then there'll be procedural issues, how to complete the roster process. Machine might have a ballot jam. They need some help in trying to deal with the ballot jam.
You press enter and it'll say activating card, and when it's complete it'll eject it, right?
You call them and a representative on the other end, they'll say what's the issue, they'll take down your information, they'll relay, we'll get your Fed out to help you for the issue if it's something that they can resolve, but if they can't, then they'll call you back.
Once an incoming issue is logged into a database, the database routes the issue to the appropriate phone bank and lists it on the screen in its category. The phone bank swings into action, and the screen reflects steps that are taken to deal with the issue until it is resolved.
So that it's also a transparent process so people in the public can actually come and look at a display of all the issues that we're dealing with throughout the day, starting at 6 o'clock in the morning.
What happens if an edge printer won't work at a poll, or there is an Insight machine malfunction? Dominion Voting Systems, the Colorado-based company which supplies machines, software, and support to the Department of Elections, runs a phone bank here at the election center and also trains and then stages 20 to 30 technicians throughout the city on Election Day. The field support team tackles many of these basic polling place issues. Either they help the poll worker over the phone.
She was so stressed out and I helped her out. Oh, yeah.
Or they get a field election deputy, or Fed, to respond out in the field. Before each election, the field election deputies learn the necessary skills to support 7 to 10 polling places in the field.
So this is a copy of the materials that you'll get in your Fed binder. So everything in here are things that poll workers do not have.
They receive special training to troubleshoot equipment issues.
So it takes a whole lot of people to run an election day, and there's also a big support team for each and every one of you.
Then, on Election Day, the Fed will check in with each polling place to make sure they are set up and running properly and be available to deal with possible issues.
I want to confirm your Insight bin is locked, which it is.
Yes.
And that your edge is fully set up.
Some questions we can resolve easily over the phone, and for some questions we need to dispatch our field election deputies to those precincts. Each field election deputy has his or her own coordinator in the election center, and that coordinator would then get in touch with that specific field election deputy and inform him or her of that specific polling place that needs assistance.
The field election deputies are our extension out in the field. They're on the ground, they're making sure that things are running smoothly, and so they'll have extra equipment, extra resources, extra ballots.
And you have your ballots, and your ballot is a 4-part ballot?
Five-part ballot. They're taking care of the finer details that we can't really take care of here while we're in the election center.
The field election deputies, or Feds, are issued a smartphone with all the phone numbers that they need and also a checklist to follow as they visit their polling places.
And they'll get a list of all the tasks they have to complete throughout the day. One example of a task, between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., the Fed should make sure that the polls are open and also drop off the supplemental ballots and check special requirements for the polling place. And when a task is completed, the Fed can indicate by checking the box.
And as the Feds check each polling place with this unique smartphone application developed by the Department of Elections, the results are also trackable back at the election center, so there is real-time accounting of polling places.
A Fed coordinator back at the election center is able to access the Fed coordinator report tool, which lists all of the feds they're assigned to and all of the tasks the Fed is in charge of completing throughout the day. As a Fed checks off tasks in the field, such as picking up their Fed bags, dropping off ballots, assisting inspectors with ballot transfers, the Fed coordinator can actually see in real time as those tasks are checked off by their feds. This allows the Fed coordinator to track in real time all of the Fed's work in the field.
Perhaps things are going smoothly out at your polling place.
Someone will give you your ballot.
Your Fed checked in, and all is well.
Okay, that completes task 3 for precinct 7836.
There's still more contact with the Department of Elections. Back at City Hall, there's another busy phone center proactively checking in with each polling place throughout Election Day.
This is the voter turnout call center. This group of 10 high school poll workers are calling all 576 polling places to ask how many voters have come to each one.
Hi, yes, my name is Sally and I'm calling for the Department of Elections. Is this precinct 7318? I'm calling to get an update on the red LED numbers on the front of your Insight machine. Could you read those to me, please? Thank you, appreciate it.
In addition to finding out overall voter turnout, specifically at each polling place, we are concerned with how many ballot cards are going into the Insight machines.
I was wondering if you could update me one last time of the LED number.
That information is going into a database that's also visible at the election center. When the voter turnout hits a certain threshold, showing that the Insight machine is getting full, the election center takes over. They notify the field election deputies. Then the field election deputy and a deputy sheriff go to the polling place and do a safe and secure ballot transfer from the Insight machine so that voting can continue.
When the polls close, poll workers pack up and account for all the ballots, the roster of voters, the memory pack from the Insight voting machine, and the Edge printer with its results report. These represent the essential results of their polling place and need to be transported safely to the Department of Elections. Poll workers can count on a San Francisco parking control officer to take custody of the memory pack and a deputy sheriff to take custody of the ballots, roster, and the Edge printer. Finally, feds check in with the election center to confirm their polling places are secured after a long day. In the days following Election Day, the trucks that delivered the election supplies and machines will once again be dispatched all over San Francisco, picking up supply packages and machines for delivery back to the Department of Elections warehouse for unpacking and storage. So the next time you're at your local polling place, take a good look behind those poll workers. If you look very closely, you may actually see the teams of people, systems, coordination, and technology that stand behind the poll workers to make your voting experience as smooth as possible.
Voting is a part of history.
Voting is like having world peace.
Voting is equality.
Voting is like stopping the violence.
Voting
is like taking weapons off our streets.
is a national health care plan.
Abolishing stereotypes.
It's like protecting your privacy.
I am the impact.
I made a difference.
I will take a stand.
You have a voice. Vote.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who do something, the people who take action, are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Good morning, my name is Francis Zamora. I'm with the San Francisco Department of Emergency Management, and we're very excited to be here today for part of this Fleet Week event. Today is Bark at the Park. We have a saying in emergency management: the first time we exchange business cards shouldn't be during an emergency, so that's what we're doing here today. San Francisco's Fleet Week is the only Fleet Week in the nation that combines the Blue Angels Air Show, the Parade of Ships, with important disaster response training. We have military, public service, and community service dogs here to demonstrate their capabilities. They're going to be doing urban search and rescue demonstrations, bomb detection. We also have community service dogs here from Canine Companions, and they are the dogs that work with people that are disabled, maybe military members that have come back from overseas that have PTSD, and provide comfort to people. So you're going to see a wide range of activities here today.
So this is Step, where he'll actually come around and step on my feet or on my foot plate and deliver the item directly into my person.
Morning, my name is Lance Corporal Schmidt. This is my military working dog, Freddie. He's a specialized search dog. What that means is he has the capability to work on and off leash to locate explosives. He's just going to be doing some basic obedience.
You have a suitcase on the carousel that's moving around, going around, going around. That odor's moving. So you got to have the dog that's going to say, okay, well, I smell it, but where is it now?
My name is Tiffany Bennett. I'm a U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agriculture Specialist, and I work out of the San Francisco International Airport with my dog, Floyd. Floyd is a 6-year-old beagle who's trained to find agriculture products. So he searches for fresh fruits, vegetables, and meat products on inbound international flights. So today at Bark in the Park, Floyd's going to be doing a demonstration showing what he's able to do at the airport. So we're going to have bags that would simulate a flight and then have targets for him to find and see if he can find them in all the busyness of the grass. Floyd is what we call a passive response dog. So while we're searching passengers arriving in the international carousel, Floyd will sniff bags and then he'll sit on somebody's bag if he thinks that they have fruit in their bag. Floyd actually has been in the field for 4.5 years, and he just passed his 10,000th career fine, so that's a big deal.
The Department of Emergency Management, our partners in public safety, the police and fire department, work consistently with our state, federal partners, and our military partners to respond to an emergency. For your own personal preparedness, go to sf72.org. There you'll find some basic guides on how to prepare yourself, your family, and your neighbors for any type of emergency.
SFO's made a lot of investments to its emergency response capabilities. The airport already has 3 fire stations, its own training aircraft, and a marine emergency response facility. So how does SFO take its resources to the next level? With a completely new state-of-the-art mobile command post. In this episode, we'll find out about this new vehicle and the critical role it plays in SFO's emergency response plans. I'm Doug Yakel, and this is Inside SFO.
To find out more about the role of the mobile command post, we met with Larry Maris, who leads the emergency operations and planning team at SFO.
You have to think of the mobile command post as that stake in the ground that identifies where all the decisions will be made. It's that one identifying source where everybody knows to automatically come to. Anytime you need to convene a bunch of people, the biggest capability, obviously, is communications, right? It unifies everybody through interoperability. It's really the hub for us to have an effective communication program. We have things like a video conferencing screen, which we didn't have before. We have video monitors that we didn't have before that will really give us the right tools to address whatever issue we're dealing with.
In fact, the new mobile command post is loaded with features to help incident commanders stay informed and provide good leadership. Once the vehicle is in position at an incident scene, pop-out sections increase the amount of space inside. A high-mast antenna keeps the vehicle in constant contact with airport communications and the Emergency Operations Center. A full suite of closed-circuit TV cameras give incident commanders real-time views of what's happening at the airport. A smart board allows decisions made in the field to be uploaded instantly to the Emergency Operations Center. 2 Wi-Fi hotspots on the vehicle keep mobile devices connected and informed.
It's a big acquisition. Obviously, this goes hand in hand with the recent purchase of our training aircraft. Now we've got the mobile command post with the latest technology. And it really, I think, shows the airport's commitment to safety and giving the first responders the tools they need to be successful.
So with the new mobile command post, SFO has made a significant investment in its emergency preparedness.
That's a wrap for this episode. Thanks very much for watching. We look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of Inside SFO.
My name's Sophie Constantino, and I am a documentary filmmaker. I am a cinematographer, producer, director. It's inevitable at some point that you want your movie to get out there, and suddenly you realize you have to be a community organizer of some kind to get people together to see the story that you have to tell. The conversations that can come out of a well-crafted film are pretty rich and interesting. And what we do as filmmakers is try and tell the best story possible. And so I think that's where I was like, well, I'll just learn everything. Learn a little lighting, learn a little cinematography. I got weird jobs as a stage manager at some place, and I was a projectionist, and I kind of mixed and matched as I went and then kept refining. I feel like it isn't just about making things that are beautiful and appealing and rich and thought-provoking the way they're filmed, but it has to tell a story.
My name is Chanel Ignant, and I am a freelance multimedia producer. My project Black NSF is comprised mostly of street photography, with a few portraits of people that I interview. I'm going around San Francisco and capturing Black life. I was inspired to do this project after constantly reading about the decline of the African American population in San Francisco, and I wondered where the remaining population was and what they were doing and how life was for them.
I wasn't very inspired by school. I wasn't very inspired by continuing to read and write and go to class. I watched a lot of movies, saw a lot of foreign films, and I was like, you know what? That's it. That's what I want to do. I had this very sort of feminist bent, and I really felt like there was not enough of a woman's vision on the stuff that we see, the movies that we make. In the beginning, the sort of the female gaze, the way that we look at women, the way that we frame women, the roles that women take in the stories that are being told felt two-dimensional. They didn't feel complex enough. And so I felt like, you know what, I have a different frame I'd like to see the world shaped by.
My grandmother, who was a teacher, she taught special education for 40 years in Los Angeles. And when I was growing up, she inspired me to record. We recorded everything. We recorded our conversations, we recorded the street, we just recorded everything with cassette players. Learning multimedia skills leads to so many other crossover employment opportunities for young people. As someone who grew up in LA, San Francisco feels like a small town. I used to live in Western Addition, and when I was looking for someone to cut my hair, I found Nate. He seemed like a very interesting guy. He grew up in the neighborhood, and he just had a lot to say about somewhere that was almost foreign to me. And that local perspective is so important to me because I think as someone who isn't from here, knowing that history allows me to be more engaging with the community that I live in. And I want the same for others. I want people that move into a new neighborhood to know what was there before, who was there before, what businesses were here, and what cultural and historical influences shape what we see today.
My guiding principle has been, if you stick to something long enough, if you know what it is and you just go for it, you will eventually get there. Now I can course adjust and refine where I want to go, what I want to do, and it's totally possible. So the impossible is, is not something to listen to.
Diet and exercise are never easy. Then again, neither is dying. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke kill nearly 1 million people a year. You can stop it starting right now. It's your life. Listen to your doctor. Eat better, get moving.
I know many of you might have seen or heard in the papers or on the media the whole issue about urination. We're testing a chemical that's applied to surfaces of concrete in areas where people have complained about urination. The pilot has taken off like a rocket. We're getting calls from all over the world, just people asking us all kinds of questions. We are in the pilot stage of using the solution. It's an idea that we got from Hamburg, Germany, where they have a lot of bars, and when these bars close at night, they had a huge problem of people coming out and urinating or down on many of their streets. And so they applied this solution with some graphic. We're doing the same pilot here and in other parts of San Francisco. When someone urinates, your urine actually bounces on the wall and comes back and wets your pants and your shoes. And I don't think anybody wants that. 2 weeks into the pilot, the reviews are great, but it's just amazing just how much this is a problem in many, many other cities, not just San Francisco. I think we are up to the challenge of trying new things to make our city a better place. Our agency will do everything it can to make sure that you have a great experience when you step foot in this town.
I guess the first thing I'd point out is the first name in our title is camp. Camp to me means there's going to be dirt, there's going to be some bugs, and as long as you can get past that part, this place is pretty awesome. You're going to get to your cabin and you're going to go, why is it so small? Or, this isn't what I expected. Well, most of your time is spent outside.
Programming was our first step. We wanted to offer a program that would, really make people happy when they came up here and leave them with memories.
Here to here, and then there. Oh. The more points you have on it.
Here we go. All right, ready? 1, 2, and 3.
I think a big part of it is that everyone is coming from San Francisco. There's kind of cohesive kind of vibe, and people can relate to each other in that way. And it's also, everyone's living in a city, so they get out here, and I feel like you really can feel the breath of fresh air that everyone's experiencing out here and kind of experiencing together.
I think it gives you an opportunity to just totally disconnect yourself from technology, and we're so wrapped up in technology when we're in the city, and you come out here and you're able to look up and not look at your iPhone and not look at your computer screen and actually interact with people on like a more social level, and you're able to build a sense of community. You kind of lose in the city when you're just walking down the street trying to get to work really quick or grab your cup of coffee.
My name's Corey.
And a typical day for me is, there is no typical day. Just from the first time being on stage for the talent show, being embarrassed up there and getting a huge applause, never expected it, and just so many different random things. It's just a really great experience altogether up here.
My name is Nathaniel Collins. I'm the executive chef here at Camp Mather. It's my job to oversee the production of over 1,500 meals per day for the guests of Camp Mather. People love our meals. They love the idea that they can come in and pick up a meal and they don't have to worry about shopping or doing dishes. They can enjoy and have a great time at Camp Mather.
Grab on and get on.
I like Camp Mather because it is just absolutely relaxing. The kids have a lot of freedom and we can come up here and be parents and just let the kids run around. It's great.
It has all of the things that I don't have to do. The kids get to do what they want to do, and basically we can focus on them, and that's our only job.
I like Camp Mather because I can ride my bike and I like to swim in the lake. I love Camp Mather because I can swim in the kiddie lagoon.
The children are up here playing around. They're riding their bicycles. It's a great place to let children see what the world is like outside of the city.
Golden Gate Park's largest body of water is the very enchanting Stowe Lake. It's a popular spot for strolling as well as picnicking and pedaling around in boats, which can be rented at the boathouse.
Created in 1893, the lake was designed for leisure boating and a promenade for horse-drawn carriages. A pleasant trail follows the lake perimeter passing Huntington Falls, a 110-foot waterfall. Two bridges connect the Lakeshore Trail to Strawberry Hill Island, where trails follow the shoreline and climb to the hill's summit, the highest point in Golden Gate Park at more than 400 feet. You can still catch glimpses of the western side of the city through thick groves of trees that make this hilltop a romantic lookout. For public transit, take the N train. Stowe Lake is ADA accessible.
We've never been under so much focus, worldwide interest. And probably never will again. This is a moment in time when a story just goes and, I'm just trying to keep up. Make-A-Wish is an organization that fulfills wishes for children with life-threatening medical conditions to give them hope, strength, and joy. We operate in every city across the U.S. There are 62 chapters nationwide and a number of international affiliates. Our chapter was formed in 1984. In that first year, we fulfilled 27 wishes, and we do over that each month now. Our chapter covers from Monterey to the Oregon border, 17 counties, and we expect to fulfill 350 wishes this year. We send volunteers out to the wish family, whether they're home in their hospital, and interviews the wish child and the parents to find out what is their one true heartfelt wish. And then we go to work to make that happen. We try to make each one unique and special and tailored to that particular child. Miles is a 5-year-old boy who was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 20 months old. Here he is at 5. He's on the other side of that now. So now he's in remission. He's had his port removed. He's not on chemotherapy anymore. He's doing great. He has good energy, which is one of the reasons why, for this particular wish, the parents wanted to wait until now to do it so he would have energy, because superheroes need energy. I began planning this wish with the family in March, and first starting to understand what Batman meant to Miles. Where was he getting his inspiration? How are we going to achieve that? One of the options I gave, and I made a bold statement about turning San Francisco into Gotham City, and that seemed to most match what he wanted. it kind of catapulted and took on a life of its own. So now it's much more intricate and much more involved because of the level of volunteers and people who have stepped forward and want to participate. People started tweeting it and reposting it, and then another blogger picked it up, and then it just went viral. What's incredible about Make-A-Wish is that while he's going through treatment during some of his darkest moments, he had this distraction and something to look forward to, so he could be thinking about being Batman. There have been a lot of superhero wishes that have happened around the country, but none of them been embraced like this. And I think that's only can happen in San Francisco, and the outpouring of love, and it's a city that does it. The mayor's on board, the city hall. It's an incredible outpouring, and I love how San Francisco is in the spotlight here, and so many people around the world who are sending their love to San Francisco. And I've never been prouder to be a San Franciscan.
Bat Kid, you won our hearts with your story and with your courage. And while we wish we can erase the pain you and your family have experienced, we hope this is the day of magic and that you'll remember this forever. Bat Kid forever in San Francisco!
But San Francisco is unique in that way, and I think it's part of our quirkiness and part of our compassion, and it's part of our, we have a civic duty to be involved, and people are stepping forward in a huge way. And how cool is that? It's certainly, now it's a lot bigger than Miles. This is about San Francisco. It's inspired by Miles, and it's about every child who has a life-threatening medical condition really is a superhero for their battle.
Wonder if things ever fall out of black holes? Or why is it you always end up in the slowest grocery line? Can't help you there. But if you're wondering what to do with things like dead batteries, leftover paint, and ratty couches, we've got the answer. Just use the Eco Finder at sfenvironment.org. It'll tell you how to recycle or get rid of just about everything. So save your wondering for life's bigger mysteries. The Eco Finder, answers to make your life easier.
We're here to raise awareness, raise money, and raise our forks for a good cause. We have this incredible gift, probably the widest range of restaurants and cuisines in any district in the city, right here in the Mission District. Why don't we capture that and work with Mission restaurants to support Mission families and youth going to college? That spawned the idea of Food for Thought.
We didn't have a signature event for our organization, which actually is a 40-year-old organization.
Mission Graduates has helped me in so many ways. They have helped me develop professionally. They have helped me develop as an individual. They have helped me figure out and provide the tools for me that I need, I feel, to be successful in life.
Mission Graduates is right around the corner. Their core beliefs and their mission and their goal is really in line with our values.
The first year we got 23 restaurants and we made about $48,000.
From year one, they were just on top of it from a marketing standpoint. It's a no-brainer for us. It's on our schedule every year.
So we're now in our 5th year, and we're really excited to be able to expand out. And tonight is our inaugural Food Truck for Thought. Food Truck for Thought is an opportunity for us to eat from a variety of different vendors that are all supporting Mission Graduates tonight by coming and representing at the park.
We're giving a portion of our proceeds to Mission Graduates today because we feel like it's very important for everybody to have a chance to have an education. We feel like this is the least that we can do, being in the food industry and having a lot of these children from the Mission District actually right by here come by and eat and enjoy our food.
All of our vendors here tonight are donating a portion of their proceeds. The vast majority of the money goes directly back into our programs. What is the best thing that we could do in terms of moving the needle for families and youth in the Mission District? But we thought higher education was really the tool that could move families and young people the most.
I'm an alumni from Mission Graduates, and I'm also a current college student. I go to the University of California, Berkeley.
92% of our students that are in college are staying in college, and that's about 4 times higher than the California average for Latino students.
I'm currently a senior at Mission High School, so I want to be a civil engineer. I'm applying to schools like Stanford, Columbia, Cornell, UC Berkeley, UCLA, schools like that.
Just knowing we're giving back to this community, especially the Spanish-speaking population, it really hits home.
Because people get hungry. Why not eat and give to a good cause? It just makes sense.
At Alemany Farmers Market, California growers have been selling fresh local produce at affordable prices since 1943. From organic apples and heirloom tomatoes to lemongrass and mizuna, our farmers bring the incredible diversity of their fields into the city. For your health and the health of your community, shop Alemany Farmers Market. It's a San Francisco tradition.
Welcome to Justice Matters. I'm San Francisco Public Defender Jeff Adachi. Does being a sanctuary city help or hurt San Franciscans? The recent killing of Catherine Steinle, allegedly by an undocumented immigrant with a criminal history, has reignited the debate over whether protecting people from immigration authorities causes more harm than good. This debate has reached a national pitch, prompting Donald Trump and other presidential hopefuls to condemn San Francisco's policies. The House of Representatives has passed legislation that would restrict federal funds for cities such as San Francisco that refuse to comply with federal immigration laws.
Today they're holding the funeral for Catherine Steinle, the young woman shot on a pier in San Francisco. Her accused killer had been deported 5 times, and that has ignited a debate over so-called sanctuary cities, where illegal immigrants are not turned over to federal authorities. John Blackstone is following this.
The repeat felon accused of Catherine Steinle's murder, Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez, has become a notorious symbol of San Francisco's sanctuary policy. Steinle's death has brought proposals both in California's legislature and in Congress for laws that would force local governments to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. San Francisco's sanctuary ordinance largely prohibits city personnel from helping enforce immigration laws. Mayor Ed Lee.
It was never contemplated that our sanctuary city would give protection to serious repeat felony offenders.
San Francisco Sheriff Rosmer Karimi insists he had no choice but to free Sanchez without alerting Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE.
Very literally, the spirit of that law tells us that we should not be communicating with ICE unless they have a court order or a warrant.
It just takes a simple phone call for that notification to happen.
San Francisco is not alone as a sanctuary city. Some 200 other jurisdictions across the country have similar policies. In California, in the last 18 months, more than 10,000 undocumented immigrants were released without federal authorities being notified.
A lot of political fallout from this.
Absolutely.
Former U.S. Attorney Joe Rusinello has been a longtime critic.
It shouldn't be surprising to anybody who's been around this town to see that San Francisco sees itself as somehow an independent city-state.
There are many calls here for a review of how a repeat felon could have been released. But, Scott, in this city with a large immigrant population, most political leaders still defend the sanctuary law.
With us on Justice Matters are Supervisor David Campos, former Supervisor Tony Hall, and USF law professor Bill Ong Hing. Now let me start with you, Bill. What is the sanctuary policy? What does that mean? And in San Francisco, we've had it since 1989. How did it come to be?
Well, Jeff, it came about in the height of the civil wars that were going on in Central America in the 1980s, when thousands of victims of the crossfire fled to the United States from places like El Salvador, Guatemala, and at that time, Nicaragua. And the United States government was denying asylum applications for most of those people coming here. They were being labeled economic migrants. They were being denied asylum at the rate of about 99% denial rate. And cities and churches and other entities around the country decided to step up and send a message and say, you know, this isn't right, and we want to help protect these individuals if possible. Now, a city can't pass immigration laws, but it can voice a view. It can take a strategy. And so the original intent of the sanctuary policy, as it was announced and reiterated at different points in the 1980s, was to declare that the city would not cooperate, would not go out of its way to cooperate with the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and would not pick up the phone and call INS if a local law enforcement official encountered someone who had ran a red light who might be undocumented, or was just encountered applying for public benefit. So that was the original intent. What you might call the most recent iteration came about when Super Avalos and other leaders of the city determined that ICE detainers, when ICE asked that local law enforcement hold an individual that ICE might be interested in, hold that individual for at least 48 hours, for 48 hours after the local law enforcement officials are completed with that person, hold that person, and then allow ICE to come in and get that person. And the truth is that there are many, many examples of individuals who ICE put detainers on that turns out that some were citizens. It turns out that some were victims of domestic violence. And it turns out that most of those that were detained were individuals that were simply not any danger to the community. And so San Francisco, like other jurisdictions around the country, sent a message and said, we are not going to allow ICE to come, we're not going to hold these individuals for 48 hours for ICE. If you want them, you've got to come after them in a different way by issuing warrants that are signed by judges, and unless it's somebody who's a very, very serious criminal who has been convicted of a serious crime, we're not going to hold that person because we don't believe that this is a good policy, that ICE detainer policies are a good policy for policing in our community.
And Tony, what do you think? I mean, do you think that this policy went too far? The sanctuary city status, I mean, has been that way for many, many years. I think most San Franciscans agree that's a good thing. You may disagree. But what do you think about the idea of, not handing people over to ICE or not cooperating with immigration authorities? Do you think that there's a problem with that should be stopped?
Well, let me just say this. Bill's history rundown of how it came about is exactly right. I was around when that happened. The original sanctuary city policy for the city and county of San Francisco was a refugee ordinance to protect innocent aliens that were here and faced with a reluctant government to give them any kind of status regarding immigration. There was no intent in that policy, nor should there have been, to protect illegal aliens or undocumented aliens who have committed crimes here and have repeatedly committed crimes here. And I can go into a bunch of examples and statistics, but that's, I think, too early for that at this point. That was not intended in the original ordinance. As it has morphed or evolved over the years, because of political pressure, politicians pandering to certain voter blocs, whatnot, it has led to a situation where the mechanisms of sanctuary cities, and they differ from city to city, have actually offered protection to felons and people who have committed crime here. Now, what has that done to a cohesive yet broken immigration system? That's what we should really be talking about, and I think we will get to that. Any discussion will lead us. How do we fix that? Has sanctuary city policies done harm? Absolutely, in my opinion, yes. Is there a need to protect those aliens, those innocent, law-abiding aliens that come here by whatever means from being deported by ICE agents who indiscriminately go after their immigration status? Yes, I agree with that. Not when it comes to those who have committed crimes or are involved in the commission of a serious felony at all. I don't think they should be given the protection of a sanctuary city.
Now, David, the due process for all ordinance, you were on the board when that ordinance was debated and ultimately passed. It was signed into law by the mayor. What is the import of that law, and how does it affect the way that our city deals with ICE detainers? And for the viewers who may not understand what a detainer is, it means that the government actually can not only detain you, but can move and transport you to an immigration holding facility. And it's something that the due process for all ordinance was implemented in order to prevent. So tell us what that is and why it was passed.
Let me say that I think that what gets lost in the hyperbole is the policy reasons beyond protection of refugees that sanctuary became a policy in San Francisco. There's actually a public safety reason behind it. As a police commissioner, I can tell you that I had conversations while I was on the police commission with many chiefs of police who talked about how it was important for people who live in our communities who happen to be undocumented to actually trust law enforcement, that it actually makes an entire community safer when an undocumented person who who has been the victim of a crime, has been the witness to a crime, feels free to come forward and report that crime to police. And there are actually many examples where by coming forward, undocumented people have actually prevented crimes from happening, have actually helped to solve violent crimes from happening. So I think the reason why the Board of Supervisors unanimously and the mayor passed this ordinance was really to not only address the issue of refugees, but actually to enhance public safety. The problem with this incident, and let me say this, that what happened is a tragedy, and it's a horrible tragedy.
And I should mention my office represents the individual who's charged in that incident.
Well, the thing about this tragic incident is that a lot of different things went wrong and led to this happening. The problem that I have is that the immediate thing that has happened is that people automatically point to sanctuary as the reason without actually taking into account that there were many mistakes that were made. And I think that instead of generalizing and saying sanctuary is at fault, I think that we should look at the facts. And in this case, I think that one of the problems is that this individual, by the way, was deported a number of times, and yet he was coming into this country. I also believe that this individual should never have been in San Francisco to begin with. And actually, one of the things that a number of us have proposed is to make sure that we look at the system that actually has San Francisco enforcing warrants that are 10, 20 years old that should not be enforced.
Right. It was a drug warrant from 20 years ago, and it caused him to be brought back to San Francisco.
And the fact that that warrant was enforced doesn't mean that there's something wrong with sanctuary. It actually does point to another problem in this system, and yet no one's talking about that issue. No one's also talking about the fact that here you have a gun that was available. By the way, a gun that belonged to a law enforcement agent. And so my point is that many things led to this incident. Sanctuary is one piece of this puzzle. But the law that we pass is a law that was never intended to protect criminals. In fact, the law has a provision that says that if there's a violent crime implicated, that individual is supposed to be turned over. But I think what's happening is that there is so much political hyperbole, and people like Donald Trump are using this issue. And I think that my friend Tony Hall has some legitimate concerns. But I think the concerns ultimately don't point to sanctuary, but actually a larger set of issues. And that's what I hope we can get to.
I know you're chopping to respond, but let me just ask you one thing, and I'll go back to you, Tony. So, the two different perspectives, should we have a law that also protects individuals who may have been convicted of crime? That debate, is it an important debate to have, and how do you see it as someone who has studied immigration policy and also the failed policies of the federal government? I think everyone agrees that we have to reform our immigration laws, but that hasn't happened.
Well, I'll take the position just to be different here, that I actually liked the very first version of the Due Process for All proposal that Supervisor Avalos proposed, and it had no exceptions, that even someone who had been convicted of a serious crime would not be turned over. And I'm for that position. This is why. First of all, and it has something to do with what Supervisor Campos just said about the trust of the entire community, that there are many people that have been convicted of even violent crimes in the past that are immigrants who have served their time. We're not talking about anyone who has not served their time. It's people that served their time in jail and have been released. And many people have come back into the community, they've straightened out their lives, but yet they might still be deportable, but ICE has not acted on those. That's why even in the current version of the Due Process Ordinance, if there's evidence that the person's rehabilitated, then the sheriff has the discretion to allow that person to not be turned over to ICE. And I like that in that as well. I just simply think that when you're talking about deporting criminals, there are different types of criminals. And the State Trust Act has an exception in it that's similar to the Due Process Ordinance, that has an exception for anyone convicted of any felony that an ICE detainer should be recognized, but the San Francisco ordinance is a little bit more generous. And I just think that San Francisco did the right thing in terms of letting that person go. I know that's going to be controversial with your viewers, because that person did not have, the alleged shooter in this case, did not have any record of a violent past. In fact, for 18 years, he was mostly in ICE custody. For 16 of the last 18 years, he was actually in ICE custody. He kept coming in and out, and they kept on catching him and putting him in federal detention. His convictions in the past had to do with nonviolent drug offenses. And so I must say that I really think that the reason why this tragic incident occurred was a failure of rehabilitation efforts for individuals who may have mental health problems, failure of gun control issues, failure of other abilities for individuals like that to be afforded opportunities to be rehabilitated. So I wouldn't have an exception for violent felons, because those people ICE can go after on their own. They can go to the state system, get them right out of state custody or federal custody. They don't have to mess around with San Francisco.
Tony?
Bill, you know as well as I do that ICE is a broken system. Our immigration laws are broken. It's underfunded. It's politically motivated. They have their hands full just chasing those serious violent offenders who have been released. Now, I'm all for compassion, but I think it's about time that we start looking at the compassion of law-abiding American citizens who become victims. Let me just read out a couple examples, if I can take a minute, to put this in a different perspective, and David brought up part of it. Last year, from January 1st through August 14th, through August 31st, 8,145 individuals with serious, violent crime histories were released by sanctuary cities into society. It's across the United States, 276 different sanctuary city jurisdictions. Of the 845, 63%, over 5,100, had serious prior criminal histories, and they were labeled as public safety concerns. Hear me out on this. 25% of the 845, or the 8,145, were already felons at the time of release. This makes no sense. So when you think this thing through on a 25% of those that were released, of the 845, went on to commit an additional 4,300 crimes of a serious nature, serious violent nature. The interesting thing is that since that time, we now have 17,000 people who have been released. 60% are still at large because the immigration system is broken. And I go back to my original contention. That's what we should be focusing on, not setting up cities and municipalities with sanctuary policies that divide our national laws on immigration. This is what Sanctuary City is doing. It's putting the wherewithal of law-abiding citizens at risk because we're releasing so many of these individuals into society. Those figures, by the way, are according to the Center for Immigration Studies. I'm not making them up. But hear me out on this if we can. If we don't address the shortcomings of ICE and we don't start looking at it for what it really is, maybe the solution is to set up federal magistrates or judges who are afforded this information who can make a decision about the immigration status. Because there's no doubt about it, ICE agents indiscriminately have tried to issue detainers, and we should explain what detainers are for the public out there. They include information about the history, the criminal history. So it's a very complicated thing. I'm not disagreeing with anybody. I'm trying to make some sense out of this thing and moving forward. Am I for sanctuary cities the way they presently are? No. Was there a need for them back in the 80s? Absolutely. I have complete compassion for those who came here as refugees and were suffering persecution. They should be protected until a path of citizenship is established. But to be indiscriminately deported, no, I'm not for that.
David, response?
Well, I don't think you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. What's happening here is you have a pretty tragic incident, and I think that those of us who have looked at the facts have provided some solutions for preventing something like this from happening. But the reality is that we cannot resolve a tragedy by creating an even worse situation. Because what's going to happen is that if you make law enforcement agencies like the San Francisco Police Department or the Sheriff's Office an arm of immigration, that I think will have the opposite effect. That will actually make our communities less safe. I think that what we require is a measured response that actually addresses the specifics of what went wrong here, instead of saying, you know, sanctuary is bad and generalizing that. I think that what we need is a very strategic and targeted response, which is what we're trying to provide. But I think that if you ask people like Chief Breton, former chief of LA, of New York Police, they will tell you that on balance, sanctuary actually has helped communities. It actually has helped to keep these neighborhoods safer because it has allowed people to report crimes that they have been witnesses to or that they have been victims of. Now, clearly, something has to be done, and I agree with Tony that we need to make sure that the intent of not helping criminal activity is addressed. But I think that throwing the entire system actually will make things worse. The other thing that I would say is this, that part of the problem here is that we also don't have a totality of the picture, because for every individual that goes and does something wrong that Tony points to, I can tell you that there are hundreds of people who are undocumented, who have interactions with police, who report crimes, who, but for the fact that they have, you know, this immigration status, are law-abiding citizens. And what's happening because of this horrible incident is that an entire community is being blamed for the actions of one individual. Yeah. What this individual did is wrong. And the undocumented people themselves will tell you that it is wrong, but they don't want to be blamed for the actions of one person.
He hasn't been convicted of anything yet.
That's why I haven't talked about this case. Not only have I been gone the last couple of months, but I don't think it's fair to talk about this case.
There's one other issue that I do want to get to, is that there is a new program now, right, that's known as the PEP program from the Obama administration.
Right.
Can you just briefly describe what that program is, and is it going to address the policy concerns raised here?
Right. What led to the nationwide litigation and resistance to the ICE detainer program was something that the Obama administration had mastered, called the Secure Communities program, which basically allowed ICE to take the fingerprints of any fingerprint that was sent to the FBI. ICE would take it, and from that they would determine whether or not somebody they thought was deportable, and they would issue the detainer. Uproar occurred. So that was thrown out in November, just this past November 2014. And in its place is this new program, Priority Enforcement Program, the PEPCOM program. And it purports to focus exclusively on dangerous criminals or people that present public safety challenges in other ways. It also purports to not use detainers in the first instance, to simply use request, informal request.
Detainer is a informal order that allows a person to be held.
It is an order. It is an order. A detainer is an ICE, well, it's an ICE request. It's not an order.
It also includes information about the background and why.
That's right.
That's important.
That's right. Whereas
so that's been de-emphasized under the new program.
Right. Under the first part of the new program, it's just a request.
Of notifications, which have absolutely no legal binding.
Right.
You know it as well as I do.
That's right.
This new program that Obama has initiated replaces a Secure Communities program that at least issued a detainer that had some teeth. Now, again, let's take it away from the agents and let's put it in the hands of a magistrate or judge. It becomes a whole different thing, becomes a whole different process. So I didn't mean to be jumping in on that.
No, I'm agreeing with you, actually. I was going to say that I agree with you on the second part of what you're saying. That when it comes to ICE detainers, my preference and the advocate's preference would be put that in front of a magistrate judge and let them issue a warrant.
Absolutely.
Because then you've got to follow, and we know that an objective decision maker has looked at it.
But let's not throw the baby out with the wash or miss the forest through the trees because we're ignoring detainers. That's what I'm saying. Because the information detainers is correct. The process is flawed.
Well, we think it's correct, but we will know it's correct if a magistrate judge
I agree.
Well, I think we're in agreement on that. But what I'll tell you, one of the problems here is that you have local jurisdictions like San Francisco that are trying to do the best they can. But the problem is that you do have a broken immigration system. And what you have from the Obama administration is, they're proposing band-aids that, quite frankly, are not going to do the job.
Right.
And I think that instead of talking around the issue, we should talk about what is needed. And what is needed is comprehensive immigration reform. And until that happens, you're going to continue, unfortunately, to have these horrible situations. And then you're going to have a federal government that, quite frankly, is not doing its job. And let's be honest about Obama. I mean, Obama. For all the talk about immigration reform, he hasn't prioritized immigration reform. He has, deported more people than George Bush did. And is the situation better? No. And so we in San Francisco are trying to do the best we can, but we're not going to be I don't think it's right for us to become a political piñata when the reality is that this is a problem that has been created at the national level, and it's going to have to be solved at the national level.
I totally agree.
On that note of agreement, we're out of time. San Francisco has long been a lightning rod for conservative critics across the country. But the truth is that San Francisco's immigration policies aren't wacky or far out there. There are 31 sanctuary cities in the United States, including our capital, Washington, D.C. That's a fact that's easy to forget amidst election year posturing in politics. I want to thank our guests, Supervisor David Campos, former Supervisor Tony Hall, and Professor Bill Onhing for being part of our show. See you next time on Justice Matters.
Nervous about my asking. And I went ahead and did it.
Yeah, if there's anywhere where we got enough to worry about.
I can't believe the bureaucracy.
Oh, the HR stuff, yeah. Yes?
Shall I pound? Not yet, okay. All right, the Ethics Commission is reconvening an open session, and Commissioner Herr has been excused, but we still have 4. And do I hear, turning to item number 9, do I hear a motion as to whether or not we should disclose the discussions and the, beyond disclosing the results of the 4 matters discussed under item 9?
I move we not disclose anything beyond those matters, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any public discussion? There being no public here, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously carried. And for the record, we will disclose that under item 1, the Commission voted to dismiss. Under item 2, the Commission voted to dismiss. Under item 3, which is sure I've got the right code. That at the regular meeting of the October 26, 2015, the Ethics Commission approved a settlement agreement regarding ethics complaint number 08-150311. And the settlement agreement is a public document and will be posted to the Commission's website. At its regular meeting on October 26, 2015, the Ethics Commission approved a settlement agreement regarding ethics complaint number 12-150609, and this settlement agreement is a public document and will be posted to the Commission's website. Turning to item 10, do I hear a motion as to whether or not we should disclose what was discussed in connection with item 10?
Move non-disclosure.
Any public discussion? Again, no public being present. I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.